All right, this is 9.2 intro to inheritance. Let's look at this business. So there's Gregor Mendel. Gregor Mendel is considered the father of modern genetics. He worked as a breeder of pea plants, and he actually worked with bees too. Not a lot of people know that. He's an Austrian monk, knew a lot of things, and his work with pea plants kind of helped our understanding of inheritance. Built a lot of things off that. He didn't really understand much about DNA or any of that kind of stuff, but he knew a lot of stuff. A really smart guy. And so let's talk about that. He worked with organisms that are typically known as true breeding organisms, meaning that they're only able to pass down one trait. We're going to get to trait in just a moment. And so like a true breeding green pea pod plant is only going to be green. All of its offspring, or it's only able to pass down green pea pods, I should say. A yellow true breeding pea pod is only able to pass down yellow. Now, that doesn't guarantee that they're only going to have certain kind of offspring. Well, it doesn't if you cross them, for sure. Now, if you cross them, what do you get? Well, you get hybrids. That's a hybrid. What is that? Is that a shorse? Is that a hark? Something along those lines. And so, sorry. So what I was saying is that true breeding organisms can only pass down green or only pass down yellow in this case. But those hybrids, they're going to have a mix, right? They're going to be a mix. And so a hybrid represents it's kind of a mix between dissimilar organisms like green and yellow. Those F1s are called hybrids. What is that F1 business? Well, let's look at Mendel's crosses. He typically had 3 generations. He had a P generation, which you see up there at the top. You don't see it very clearly, but you can kind of see it. There's the P up there, right? And this is the original parental generation is what that P stands for. Typically, he would use true breeding organisms for his P1 generation. Not necessarily, but we're going to go ahead and roll with that true breeding. In this case, you have true breeding round, and true breeding wrinkled seeds. This particular one has 2 traits. We're not going to worry about that. The F1 generation, don't need to know what F stands for in this case. This is the offspring of the P generation. Every time they're going to be hybrids, right? They're going to be a mix between the round, wrinkled, and in this case also between the yellow and green, right? It's a hybrid. And then the F2s, what they did is they allow the F1s to self-pollinate or self-fertilize, which is not a concept that we're going to talk about. But that self-fertilization is going to have some offspring as well. And then the F2 generation then are the offspring of those F1s self-fertilizing, which is going to have myriad results depending on the type of cross that you're doing, which we're going to get into in 9.3. What is a trait? Well, it's a specific characteristic that varies from one individual to another. Some people can roll their tongues. Some people have freckles. Some people have widow's peak. I used to have a widow's peak. Some people have free earlobes. Some people have attached. Some people have a cleft chin. I'm just reading. You can see that. There's all kinds of neat stuff, right? These are just human traits, but some animals have shark heads and others don't. I mean, whatever. These are all traits. You get the idea. Traits are inherited. Typically, we're going to get into some differences where they may not be, but typically traits are inherited. They can have multiple expressions. Those traits are coded for on genes, right? And where do we get those? Okay, then. Talking about chromosomes. Remember chromosomes? Well, we have homologous chromosomes. Remember homologous chromosomes? And you get one from mom, one from dad. Well, what if mom gives you attached and dad gives you free earlobes? Those are different versions of that gene, right? We call those versions of genes alleles. So an allele is a different version of a gene, right? And there can be one of 2 different kinds of versions of those genes. You can have a dominant allele. You can have a recessive allele. The dominant allele is always going to show. We're going to get ready and see that in a moment. Usually represented by an uppercase letter. The recessive allele is typically going to be represented by a lowercase letter. And every person has 2, right? Every person has 2. We'll get there in a second. 2 alleles. If you have 2 dominant alleles, you can say you're homozygous. Homo means same. Zygous, zygote. Think of the sperm plus egg equals zygote, right? So if dad gives you a big A, mom gives you a big A, that's the same zygote, dominant, right? And then there's homozygous recessive, also 2 little a's. You see that there on the far right. And what if you have one of each? Well, then you're heterozygous. No need to say dominant or recessive because it would actually be wrong. And so heterozygous means that you have one of each allele. Homozygous, the same allele. Homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive, both recessive. Mendel's principle of dominance says that the dominant trait always expresses itself. So Mendel had 3 principles or 3 laws. Sometimes you'll see them called laws, principles, whatever. Same idea. And the principle of dominance says that dominant always expresses itself unless, well, there's no unless. Recessive can't express itself if there's no dominant available. So if you look at this picture, what's dominant? Red is dominant, of course. And even if there's a recessive there, it's not red and yellow make orange, right? It's red and yellow make red because red always expresses itself unless there's no dominant, and then you get yellow with cherries, apparently. Notice those words on the left, phenotype, genotype. What do they mean? Well, you need to know those words are pretty important. Could actually use the previous picture. It's kind of nice. Phenotype, these are the physical characteristics. Like you have physical characteristics of these flowers. They're purple and they're white. It's literally what you see. Phenotype, physical, PH, right? That's how I remembered it my whole life. That's how I've taught it for years. And so a phenotype is a physical characteristic. It's the thing that you see. Genotype, these are words like homozygous, heterozygous, dominant, recessive, right? This is big P, little p. This is words like that. You don't see someone's genotype. You see their phenotype. You see that they have brown hair. You don't see that they have blonde hair from their mom, brown hair from their dad, so they're heterozygous, right? So understand that. Genotype, physical characteristics, phenotype, physical characteristics, genotype, genetic makeup, if you want to say that. And then next is the principle of segregation. This is going to kind of get us into the idea of proper Mendelian genetics, dealing with probability and that kind of thing. And so principle of segregation says this, that if an individual has 2 alleles, which they do, right, they get one from mom, one from dad, and those 2 alleles have an equal chance of being inherited. When did we learn about that? Oh, remember the whole like homologous pairs separate, sister chromatids separate thing, meiosis, right? So a homologous pair might be big A, little a, right? They're homologous, they're not the same. Let's go back up and look at that, right? They're homologous pair, so a heterozygous pair would be one big A from mom, one little a from dad, right? It's a homologous because it has the same genes, it just has different versions of those genes. Well, when you create gametes, you have an equal chance to create gametes with little a as you do big A. This is called the principle of segregation. Basically, big A and little a, or in this case, big Y and little y in this picture, separate from one another during the process of meiosis, and it gives them an equal chance to be inherited.